Welcome to the Cobb Democrats virtual town hall for Cobb County School Board Post 5. I'm Jacqueline Bedadapour, the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Committee. Matt Southwell, the Cobb Democrats' first vice chair, is joining me tonight. We're speaking tonight with two Democratic candidates who will appear on the June 9th Democratic primary ballot in Cobb School Board Post 5. We have Tammy Andress and Julia Hurtado. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Before we get started, I will take my plea to our viewing audience, make my plea to our viewing audience. Please vote by mail on June 9th. Due to the public health crisis, there may be poll worker staffing shortages during the in-person early vote period and on election day. This will likely result in a reduced number of voting locations, long lines, overcrowding, and increased risk of COVID-19 exposure. You can vote from the comfort and safety of your home by absentee ballot, vote by mail. You do not have to put your health on the line to vote. And now with recent developments, you may have the option of vote by drop box without requiring postage. Visit our website, cobbdemocrats.org, for more information on vote by mail. So, Cobb County School Board Post 5. This district covers parts of East Cobb, ranging from the northeast border out to Trickham Road and south along East Piedmont Road, with a small bit extending further to Lower Roswell Road and the Powers Ferry area. The current incumbent, the schools of jurisdiction, the post has oversight jurisdiction for Pope and Lassiter High Schools and many of their feeder schools. The current incumbent is an 81-year-old Republican, David Banks, who was first elected to that post in 2008 and is the current vice chair of the Cobb Board of Education. So let's turn to the candidates. We're going to start with 2-minute opening statements, followed by questions with a 90-second response time, 45-second rebuttals if a candidate or a candidate's position is called out by the opposing candidate, and then 2-minute closing statements. Matt Southwell will be keeping the time. Let's start with Tammy Andress. Please introduce yourself to the voters. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Andress, and I'd like to take this opportunity to first thank the Cobb Dems for providing the opportunity for Julia and I to speak tonight with regard to educational priorities that we believe will help Post 5. I'm the mother of 3 daughters, Hannah, a 2018 Lassiter graduate and a junior at American University, Rebecca and Rachel, juniors and freshmen who are both still at Lassiter. My husband Kiffer and I moved to the East Cobb area almost 16 years ago in order to provide the best quality public education that we could for our daughters. I became an immediate advocate for education while my eldest was in kindergarten because even then I saw the disparity in resources provided to our children depending on their perceived ability to learn. In order to make a change, I became an active participant in enhancing the climate of my schools by becoming a PTA leader, being president at the elementary, middle, and currently at the high school level, as well as a VP on the East Cobb Council of PTAs, which represents 35 East Cobb schools. Over the years, I have participated in multiple educational priorities affecting special needs students, provided training in family engagement, school safety, legislative advocacy, diversity, inclusion, educator support, anti-bullying programs, and more. I have successfully advocated for priorities affecting my schools multiple times in front of the school board. Personally, I believe that every child has the potential to reach their dreams, and it's our job to help them get there by providing them with the best environment possible to enhance the learning experience. And that means putting partisan politics, increasing stakeholder confidence and transparency, and working towards finding the best solutions together to educate all of our children. I have years of experience, training, and proven leadership throughout Post 5, and I'm ready to be your voice and to be your advocate.
Thank you, Tammy. Julia Hurtado, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks to the Cobb Dems for putting this event together. I'm so grateful that voters can stay informed from afar. My name's Julia Hurtado, and I'm running for school board because we have an ongoing problem in our communities where some kids have less of a chance to succeed than others. As a neurologic physical therapist who treats adolescent student athletes with concussion, it's my job to advocate for students all day. And I wouldn't be a very good clinician if I had the same treatment plan for every one of my patients, regardless of their differences. And if I insisted that that plan work on everyone and silenced complaints when it didn't work, that'd be irresponsible. But that's exactly what our board is doing with some of our kids. Cobb schools are great for some kids, but they're not always great for everyone. They're not always great for kids who require special ed, for kids who are bullied because of their race, gender, or religion, or for kids who require counseling services. It's not their fault that we're failing them. We're not providing them what they need in order to be successful. They're falling behind or even being overly disciplined because we're not giving them what they need. And those kids deserve a great education too. They just need an advocate. We can't continue to treat every kid the same way that we've always treated everyone because it's not working. We need to treat them equitably to ensure that everyone has what they need to be successful. Equity is a word I've heard only recently from our board. And even now, it's not mentioned by our majority. The majority is actually silencing our board members who are brave enough to have these tough conversations. And equity isn't something that should be whispered or that we should be afraid to talk about. It should be the center of our policies and our curricula. There's nothing political about advocating for our kids. It's not controversial, it's just the right thing to do. We need to have equitable policies, and we need to have the transparency within our board to achieve these policies together.
Thank you, Julia. We'll start with questions. Julia, we'll start with you. What do you believe are the 3 most important issues facing the school district in order of importance?
I think most importantly, as I mentioned, is inequity. Racism is rampant throughout Cobb County, and not just among our students, but our teachers suffer from racism as well. And I firmly believe that if we're not actively working to dismantle hate, we're contributing to it. And to me, special ed falls under that category of inequity as well. Any marginalized community that needs additional support, we need to be working harder for those communities. I think probably the second most important issue, or maybe tied for first. Can I have 3 first choices for this? The second most important issue is safety. My daughter is 6 years old and told me a few months ago that she appreciated being short because she could find the best hiding spots during a code red drill. That's unacceptable, but that's our reality right now. We're living in a world of heightened anxiety, and now we're adding a global pandemic and all of that associated stress to it. Kids deserve to feel safe physically and emotionally at school, and we need to do better with providing adequate counseling services. I think another issue is transparency. We need to have our board, our educators, our administrators, and our families communicating with each other and forming a coalition of community where we can all work together towards a common goal.
Thank you. Tammy, what do you think are the 3 most important issues facing Post 5 school district?
So in normal circumstances, I would, my number 1 thing would be meeting the unique needs of every child. But in this age of COVID-19, that has got to be one of my beliefs that we're going to have this problem. There is no doubt that due to COVID-19, we've got a loss of foundational learning, that curriculums and especially in subject matters that require foundational learning, will have to be reworked by educators to ensure that material that would have been covered from March 13th to May 20th is included in next year's classes. And I would go to teachers to see how to make that happen. They are in the trenches. They know the students. They are the best resources to ensure that learning isn't lost. And in order to do that, my second priority would be that we need to increase teacher support. And that does not just include making sure that they are properly compensated. It's so much more. We need more qualified teachers in the classrooms. We need smaller class size. We need textbooks, and we need innovative online learning tools. CCSD is providing great technology, but we need more teachers to solve the problems that come with 20 plus students in a class for just elementary and 25 to 40 for middle and high school. And that brings me to fiscal responsibility and board transparency and trust. We have to have fiscal responsibility so that we could move forward with funding the items that we need for student success. We need to ensure that the CCSD budget is healthy and can support increases in hiring qualified educators.
Thank you, Tammy. Your time is up.
Okay.
So you touched on this a little bit, Tammy. The third question is the effects of COVID-19 allow us an opportunity to reimagine public education. And what two initiatives do you think the Cobb County School District can do to reimagine the traditional model of school?
So COVID-19 should be a catalyst for change in the traditional educational model. The one thing that we've learned is that we can adjust to still educate our children when crisis hits our community. And while my biggest fear is still the loss of foundational learning needed for some core subjects, stakeholders have worked together to ensure continued learning in the short term. So a reimagining of education needs to start by looking at the public-private educational partnerships that have formed in the wake of this pandemic. These alliances could and should grow in importance. So learning consortiums and coalitions have developed with a diverse group of stakeholders that include, but is not limited to, educators and parents, students, government entities, publishers, media and entertainment industry professionals, higher level educational organizations, and technology and telecom providers that are offering free digital platforms that will provide access to a diverse range of educational tools for our schools, for our nation's students. And CCSD needs to explore a way to incorporate and expand on those partnerships for cross-industry partnerships that can be formed that have a common goal of enhancing digital learning. And furthermore, if we do decide to move to the less traditional mode of education and morph to a more online learning approach, CCSD will need to connect food and technology insecure students with resources that they need to ensure continued excellence in education.
Thank you. Tammy, your time is up.
Julia, what are your thoughts on reimagining the traditional model of school?
I completely agree. I think that we can't talk about the COVID crisis without talking about how access to internet is absolutely imperative for education right now. And we need to make sure that kids who are having difficulty accessing technology and food are able to have those resources secured. I think also it's brought to light a bit about mental health and just, having kids at home worrying about, are my teachers okay? Are my friends okay? This has really, I think, made a lot of parents and families have greater insight about just the stresses of learning and the stresses of what our teachers are going through trying to make this happen. Oh my gosh, y'all are doing amazing. So I think that hopefully we'll carry that into once we get things back to a more structured in-person learning environment. But I also think we've had some benefits with the flexibility of this environment. I think that distance learning has allowed for more individualized curricula. If there are kids who maybe are more advanced, they have an opportunity to take a deeper dive into a subject and do more self-guided study. Or if there's a kid who's maybe needing a little bit more time to catch up, they have that flexibility. I think it's also kind of forced parents and teachers to really communicate a lot more and practice some self-advocacy to make sure that every student is kind of continuously being assessed, that we're practicing metacognition and thinking about what we're doing while we're doing it to make sure that education is individualized and everyone can get what they need.
So, Julia, how will you ensure the most vulnerable student population within your post is supported? This population could include students requiring special ed services, English learners, and economically disadvantaged students.
Yeah, and these are groups of individuals who I think historically we've left behind, and that's absolutely unacceptable. I think when you look at economically disadvantaged groups of students and you look at social mobility statistics, when kids are starting off disadvantaged to begin with, and then, God forbid, they don't graduate high school, there's just such a smaller chance of them to be financially successful in our society. It's really up to the schools to make sure that kids have a good starting point into successful adulthood where they're contributing to society. So this is absolutely imperative. I think this is also where schools can contribute to this school to prison pipeline, or, or instead of that, making sure that kids are set up for success and having the resources that they need to make sure that their environment is supporting them and that they're able to graduate successfully. I think that, especially as a neurologic physical therapist, I'm very aware of all of the issues with our special ed services, and I think that this is something that needs a complete overhaul or at least an update that's more evidence-based. I'd love to see some collaboration with community partnerships like local occupational therapists who could maybe provide webinars on how to complete IEPs, things that just aren't intuitive to people that they could really use some support with. And I think that in terms of making sure that English learners and more marginalized groups are feeling accepted within our community, we need to do some inherent
Thank you,
bias
Julia.
training.
Your time is up.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Tammy, how would you ensure the most vulnerable student populations are supported in the schools?
Well, I would support teachers. We need more qualified and properly certified teachers that are trained in special needs and ESOL. More teachers would reduce class size, which itself would go a long way to solving a myriad of issues, including behavioral problems, bullying, the inability to provide individual student support, lack of teacher planning time, et cetera, et cetera. We need to ensure that the balance of students in inclusion classes is manageable and ensure that those teachers are supported with resources like co-taught teachers and special ed parapros. And this would support not just the teacher, but those general ed and IEP students they teach, and it would enhance the learning environment for all. If you put 25 plus students in an 8th grade reading class and every one of those students has an IEP, you are setting that teacher and those students up for failure. CCSD should also be offering and encouraging general ed teachers to take more specialized education training to learn about those behaviors that are associated with the invisible disability students, which are those mainstream students that have issues that need to be managed. I would also advocate for most social emotional counselors, especially at the high school level, where counselors are basically academic guidance counselors. But elementary schools and middle schools that have high populations of students need more than 1 or 2 counselors. And furthering family and student engagement opportunities need to be explored to encourage student and parent participation in enhancing their school climate and creating community bonding opportunities. And these could be activities like CCSD funded out
Thank
of
you,
school
Tammy. Your
education
time is up.
opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, would you support efforts to have a task force investigate sustainable funding efforts to include the senior tax exemption, the homestead exemption, and EdSPLOST?
100%. I believe in obtaining all the information available before asking stakeholders to enact change. Voters in Cobb County should know if there is fraud, a changing socioeconomic demographic, or an impactful loss of revenue due to any of the funding streams you have asked about. But I would actually further advocate by encouraging our state representatives to look at and make changes to the quality-based education formula, or QBE. QBE is an outdated formula that has been used to determine the amount of CCSD funding that has been taken from our county and used as an attrition tool for less revenue-rich counties in Georgia. However, as it was written in the early 1980s and did not account for inflation or county growth, we are sending hundreds of millions of dollars from Cobb to counties who already have school systems that have grown exponentially over the last 3 decades. And while I'm all for spreading the wealth, we are funding counties that can now fund their own school systems. While we need to scrutinize our county resources, our legislators need to quit being afraid and tackle QBE at the state level to make sure that there is an equitable distribution of tax dollars throughout the states.
Julia, would you support efforts to have a task force investigate sustainable funding of the Cobb County School District?
Yeah, as a scientist whose decisions daily in patient care are driven by evidence, I was shocked to hear that this motion did not pass within our current board. Our board has a policy that we're supposed to be creating evidence-based, data-driven policies. Why wouldn't we want to study those data to make sure that we're really doing what's going to be the most effective for our community? And an investment in our schools is an investment in our community. So we need to figure out what we're doing with our resources. And that means starting an investigation to see where that money needs to go and where it should come from.
Thank you. A lot's been written about the school to prison pipeline and discipline in schools contributing to that, discipline of children of color and minority groups. Do you think our school district contributes to the school to prison pipeline? And if so, what needs to be done to address this?
I think that our board needs to work on this issue, and we need to be working with our superintendent as well. We have a common goal of supporting graduation rates. And when we have kids who are being overly disciplined and labeled as problems, when we're not working to actually solve those problems themselves, we're not giving them a chance to be successful. And so if we're all working towards this common goal together, we should be able to collaborate and compromise and create change that's going to help every one of those students be successful. These issues are affecting some communities, Black and Brown communities, disproportionately. And if we can find some way to do some inherent bias training with our faculties, with teachers, administrators, and students to help everyone figure out how we can dismantle hate, I think that's going to help set up more kids for success, just to help kids feel more supported.
Thank you. And Tammy, your thoughts on the school to prison pipeline and the Cobb County School District?
Well, I could write a dissertation on this one, but let's just go ahead and start with the data collection problem within Georgia's DOE's Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support Plan. It's not accurate, and the CCSD's PBIS data would reflect the discipline disparity between students of color and students who have disabilities than their white counterparts. However, the real problem that I have with the school to prison pipeline is the zero tolerance policy that we have in Cobb. While I fully accept that taking away this behavioral modification tool can lead to subjective discipline, the real issue with this is the inability for flexibility in discipline for students whose behavioral issues stem from circumstances that they can't control. These are not throwaway children, and they deserve a plan for success through education instead of being at the mercy of the juvenile justice system. Now, I'm not advocating for the bully in the schools. That's a whole nother issue. What I am talking about here is zero tolerance practices relating to minority and special needs students that stem from external and uncontrollable factors affecting behavior. CCSD needs to work for equity to the county's PBIS program through data collection that is accurate and truthful. They need to work on student advocacy, and they need to work on policy reform. We need to ensure full compliance with the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and we need cultural competency training for teachers, an inclusive curriculum, and the National PTA, because we all know I'm a PTA person, suggested family engagement principles. Zero tolerance policies need to be removed from our schools to ensure that we are not consigning
Thank
these
you, Tammy.
students
Your
who need
time is up.
support to prison. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes the question segment. We'll move into closing statements, and we'll have Julia Hurtado up first. Julia, you have 2 minutes.
The young student athletes I treat need someone in their corner to help set them up for success and fight for them to make sure that they have what they need to be successful as they return to education, to sports, to their social lives. And I'll bring the same commitment to fight for all of our students. We must provide each student with an opportunity to succeed, regardless of whether they have a temporary disability from a concussion or whether they've lived with a disability their entire lives, regardless of their race or what language they speak at home. And we need every teacher to have the support that they need to help those students achieve. When some students get left behind, when we are leaving students behind with our current policies, our entire community suffers. We need an advocate who's going to make sure that every student has an opportunity to thrive within our community. I've been an activist my entire life, sometimes with political campaigns, sometimes with nonpartisan organizations like the Anti-Defamation League and Moms Demand Action. My influence for trying to make a better world is to create a better world for my daughter. And what better way to do that than through our schools? I'm running for Cobb County Board of Education to build a coalition of community through education, not just for some of us, but for all of us. I hope you'll go to juliaforcobb.com to learn more about me, how I'm going to flip this seat, and how we can move Cobb forward together. I know that our daily lives look a little different right now. As a healthcare provider, my life looks very different right now, but postcard writing and text banking are not that time consuming, and I would love to have you as a volunteer with our campaign. And most of all, I'd love your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Tammy, your closing statement?
So I'm running on a platform of removing barriers to education. We need to excel in educator support, transparency, and honest stakeholder representation, meeting the unique needs of every child in our schools, fiscal responsibility, and justice and equity in all practices and policies within CCSD. I believe that partisan politics has chipped away at our ability to work together to educate all our children, no matter their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, their socioeconomic status, their mental and physical handicaps, and so on. I believe that we need a fresh and innovative perspective regarding education from someone who is and has been in the trenches for over a decade, working hard to advocate and learn how to support all stakeholders in public education. And I believe that my experience and ability to work with a wide and varied network of educators, policymakers, parents, students, community partners makes me qualified to be that effective advocate and that voice in Post 5 and in all of Cobb County. We need someone who's willing to work to enhance the school climate, protect and expand on our resources, especially our teachers, and work towards increasing student success from pre-K to post-high school, whether that be a 4-year college or a technical college, or those that just want to join the workforce upon graduation. And my passion and my experience make me that most qualified candidate. I invite you to go to my website, which is tammyforschoolboard.com, or to my Facebook and Instagram pages, which is Tammy for Cobb. My platform is on there. I am doing videos that will tell you more and more and more about what it is that I am, what I believe in, and what I think is important for Cobb County and for the children of our schools. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and please contact me if you've got questions or comments or concerns or anything that can move education in Cobb County forward.
Thank you, Tammy. Your time's up.
Thank you. So that concludes our candidate portion of the Town Hall for Democratic Candidates in Cobb School Board Post 5 race. Thank you, Tammy Andress and Julia Hurtado, for joining us tonight. In closing, I want to mention that there are a total of 4 Cobb School Board seats up for election this year. We held virtual town halls for Post 1 and Post 5 this evening because they are the 2 posts with contested Democratic primaries. After the primary election, we look forward to speaking with Democratic candidate Lindsay Terrebonne, who's running for School Board Post 7. She's challenging an incumbent Republican and current chair of the school board, Brad Wheeler. In School Board Post 3, we have Democrat Trey Hutchins, who's the presumptive new board member for Post 3, as he has no one running against him on the Democratic side or the Republican side. So 4 school board seats up for election in 2020, and we have good, strong Democratic candidates running in all those races. So get out and vote by mail or vote by drop box. You just need to vote June 9th in the general primary, and vote all the way down the ballot. These school board races will appear towards the bottom of your ballot. So work your way through President and U.S. Senate and the U.S. Congress, but please go all the way down to the bottom and find your school board candidates there. So vote like your life depends on it, because as we've seen, it does. So thank you for joining us tonight. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good night. Thank you.